You'd be surprised how many mums-to-be don't actually know what's safe to eat while they're pregnant. And there is a lot of conflicting information out there. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I don't have a lot of first-hand experience being pregnant or eating while pregnant, but I have analysed a lot of the research. Let's take a look at it now. What you eat during pregnancy is crucial. The developing fetus completely depends on the availability and supply of nutrients provided by the mother. The quality of these nutrients, whether helpful or harmful, is determined entirely by her nutrient stores and her eating patterns. So it's troubling that a review of 25 previous studies found most women do not receive adequate nutrition education during pregnancy. With those stats in mind, the question, what can't you eat when pregnant, becomes all the more important. So let's take a look at the top 6 foods to avoid. Number 1, avoid unsolicited dietary supplements during pregnancy. Some supplements contain superloaded quantities of abortifacients. An abortifacient is a substance that causes contractions of the uterus wall, inducing abortion. Foods naturally high in abortifacient compounds were commonly used during the pre-pharmaceutical era. So herbal, spiritual preparations were trusted, although the effectiveness of these has never been confirmed through scientific methods. Now, abortifacients used today are pharmaceutical drugs, the most famous being the morning after pill. Now, fenugreek is a great example of a natural food with known abortifacient properties. It's commonly used as a supplement to help improve blood sugars and even to help stimulate lactation after pregnancy. However, when given to pregnant rats in moderate doses, fenugreek is suspected of causing birth defects, particularly related to spinal development. Like I said before, effects of abortifacient-like food supplements are limited to animal studies and anecdotes, which is like casual observation. So it is not proven in scientific method. However, there are studies in animals that show harmful effects, so it would be wise to avoid fenugreek supplementation, for example, just to be safe. You can always ask your doctor or dietitian about supplements first. Number 2, avoid fish that are high in mercury, such as shark and tuna. Now, excessive mercury in the blood is linked with both pregnancy complications and developmental problems in infants, particularly brain development. Shark, tuna, marlin, and other predatory fish contain the largest sources of mercury in the human diet by far. There certainly appears to be a linear relationship with mercury levels and IQ deficit in children. So, in other words, IQ scores drop with increased mercury levels. Now, some argue there are no safety concerns if the amount of selenium in a fish is higher than its mercury content. But there's no evidence for those protective effects on long-term mercury exposure. And you got to keep in mind the regional differences. So a species that's low in mercury or high in selenium in one part of the world might not be in another. So you never know for sure what you're getting. Now, is it worth it? To me, I don't think so. So, therefore, the safest recommendation for pregnant women is to minimize all mercury exposure. If you must eat fish, go for non-predatory varieties. So the varieties that don't eat other fish, like salmon, sardines, trout, mackerel, and herring. They contain the least mercury because they don't eat other fish, and are considered safe to eat if servings are no more than 350 grams or 12 ounces a week. And that's basically one serving a week. Now, fish oil and cod liver oil supplements are also considered safe, and they're a great way to ensure you get optimal omega-3 intake, which is important for both the health of you and the baby. Now, just be sure to look for labels that confirm the product is low in mercury, or ask your dietitian or your doctor. Number 3, steer clear of alcohol and large amounts of caffeine. Teratogenic is the term used for any compounds and substances that can disrupt the development of an embryo or fetus. Some well-known teratogens include alcohol, caffeine, especially during the first trimester, and cocaine and methamphetamine, otherwise known as ice. Now, to be safe, complete avoidance of teratogenic substances during pregnancy is strongly recommended. It's well established that the offspring of mothers consuming alcohol during pregnancy suffer from developmental delays and behavioural changes. Everyone agrees on that. Caffeine is another teratogenic substance that is not entirely safe, and a lot of people refuse to believe that. It is a psychoactive substance, one that crosses the placenta to the baby. While you may be tolerant to the caffeine in your morning coffee, your child isn't. Now, many leading health organisations recommend caffeine intake be limited to less than 200 milligrams per day if you're pregnant. That's equal to about 350 ml cup of coffee. And remember that caffeine exists in a variety of different foods, including tea, soft drink and chocolate, just not to the amount that you find it in coffee. Number 4, limit your intake of dairy foods, particularly milk. Now, cow's milk is a unique source of essential proteins and minerals. I'm not arguing that. That's the reason physicians and health professionals recommend increased servings during pregnancy. However, a new problem has emerged in recent years of research. Cow's milk is more than just a nutrient for mammals, whether for cows or for us. Because unlike meat and fish, which are structural proteins, cow's milk is a signaling protein. The signaling properties of cow's milk protein activates the nutrient-sensitive protein complex mTORC1. Now, mTORC1 is a key regulator of cell growth, formation, and metabolic programming. By activating mTORC1, cow's milk functions as an endocrine signaling system. So it affects the hormones that impact on growth and metabolism. The overstimulation of mTORC1 explains why a high cow's milk intake during pregnancy is strongly associated with increased fetus growth and birth weight. This is known medically as macrosomia. Now, overstimulation of mTORC1 is also linked to other health problems throughout a human's life cycle, including obesity and prostate cancer too. So this image illustrates the difference in birth weight of offspring from mothers with a protein intake ranging from very low, which is Q1, to very high, which is Q5 or quintile 5. So on the left you have difference in birth weight in grams. So the 0 there, the thick black line that runs along the middle, indicates no difference, and then above that is heavier than the norm, and below that is lighter than the norm. Now down the bottom you have the quintile of protein intake, so the amount of protein in grams per day that the mother had. Sorry. So you've got, if we look at, for example, the non-dairy group in the middle, you have non-dairy Q5, so those who ate a very high protein intake diet, but none of that protein was from dairy, so it was either vegetable or meat. So they actually had by far the offspring with the lowest birth weight, as you can see by the black square in the middle of the bar there, much lower than the other squares below the 0. Now if we look at the Q5 group in dairy, you can see that they had pretty much the highest birth weight, above average, and even Q4 dairy and Q3 dairy also had a very high birth weight. Now this suggests that high dairy protein intake, and not other forms of protein, leads to a high birth weight. The reason it holds some scientific value is because this result reached statistical significance, so it means that it's very highly unlikely this finding was due to chance. So it's well accepted that dairy is problematic and inappropriate for children less than 12 months old. It's also well accepted that cow's milk-based infant formulas provide excessive nutrients and growth hormones compared to breast milk. So it only makes sense that large amounts of dairy during pregnancy are probably not beneficial for the baby either. Now you can get adequate nutrition, including calcium and vitamin D, from leafy vegetables, mushrooms, eggs, and other food sources proven to be beneficial and safe. Basically, if you've got a wholesome, varied diet. So why take the risk with excessive cow's milk when we know it could be problematic? You can still enjoy, regular or small amounts of milk, but just don't increase intake because you're pregnant. Number 5, pregnant mothers should avoid raw and undercooked animal products. They have the potential to foster harmful bacteria like Salmonella and Listeria. And these bacteria can cross the placenta and harm the baby. So uncooked foods such as raw sushi, raw eggs, and unpasteurized milk should be completely avoided. Not that many people eat them, but some do. And ready-to-eat animal products like deli or cold-pressed meats, soft and semi-soft cheeses are also potential sources of harmful bacteria. Now, the risk of exposure from these products is actually extremely low, like very low, but the risk is there nevertheless. So if you do continue eating these foods, you should choose the freshest foods, so close to the manufacture date. Eat them by the next day at the latest, and ensure they're consistently stored below 4 degrees, so in the fridge. Lastly, number 6, minimize or avoid food products high in added sugar. During and immediately after pregnancy, it is clear added sugar is hazardous to health, perhaps even quote-unquote toxic, as sugar is so often labelled in the media today. Excessive sugar in the diet leads to insulin resistance and prediabetes, otherwise known as glucose intolerance. The risk of glucose intolerance is much greater while pregnant because insulin function, which moves glucose from the blood into the cells, it naturally weakens during this time. So less working insulin means more sugar stuck in your bloodstream. Now, a glucose intolerance identified during pregnancy is known as gestational diabetes. The risks of gestational diabetes are prominent for both mother and child, so we'll just list them here quickly. Number 1, children born to mothers with any form of maternal diabetes have a greater risk of becoming obese or developing type 2 diabetes compared to children born to diabetic fathers. Now, this is because sugar ingested by the mother can cross the placenta to the fetus, while insulin, remember the hormone that removes sugar, cannot cross the placenta. So as a result, the fetus has to increase its own production of insulin to metabolize that sugar. Number 2, increased insulin secretion is an important growth factor for a developing fetus. So it can lead to excessive growth and large birth weight, which is not ideal. Number 3, the extent of your child's weight gain in the first year becomes a factor for insulin resistance. It's not a factor for children born to mothers without gestational diabetes. Number 4, women with gestational diabetes in their first pregnancy have a 41% increased risk for recurrence in their second pregnancy, and they also have an increased risk of type 2 diabetes later in life. And additionally to that, every extra 4.5 kilos or 10 pounds that's gained after pregnancy is associated with a 2-fold increase in type 2 diabetes risk. So it's really all the more reason to eliminate unnecessary calories like added sugar from your diet. Now, the recommended amount of weight gain while pregnant has recently been reduced by the Institute of Medicine. So women with a pre-pregnancy BMI of 25 to 29.9, they should gain a total of between 7 to 11 kilos or 15 to 25 pounds. Women with a pre-pregnancy BMI of 18.5 to 24.9, they should have a total weight gain of between 11 to 16 kilos or 25 to 35 pounds. So that works out to be only 250 to 300 additional calories per day, basically equivalent to 1 boiled egg and 1 handful of almonds. That's it. As you can see, eating for 2 certainly doesn't mean you should eat twice as much, but it does mean you should be twice as careful. By understanding what foods to avoid and what portions are safe, you are gifting your child the best start possible. For additional information and the full list of scientific references, you can see the original article at dietversusdisease.org. So there you have it. Based on the current scientific evidence, they are the top 6 foods to avoid when you're pregnant. Now, just to clarify on the point I made about dairy, it is based on observational data, which doesn't prove cause and effect. But we can see that from drinking more cow's milk, there doesn't seem to be any extra benefits or positives. There certainly seems to be potential negatives. So I just don't think it's warranted to increase your cow's milk intake, which I know a lot of people are recommended to do when they're pregnant. If you want to find out more, you can read the original article on my website, and there's also other articles and videos there on different topics. So until next time, thanks for watching.